Why don't 90s brands dominate culture anymore? They absolutely used to. In the 90s, you didn't choose Ralph Lauren, it chose you. It was in the mall, it was on Snoop, it was on television. And when a brand hit, it hit nationally. Everyone saw it at the same time. Tommy Hilfiger, Gap, Abercrombie, Ralph Lauren, they weren't niche, they were curated. They were everywhere, when everywhere meant power. Today, that feels a little different. Ralph Lauren drops a documentary about Oak Bluffs. Tommy shows up at the Met Gala inside a F1 car. Abercrombie partners with the NFL. And Gap generates millions of impressions with TikTok-led campaigns. The moments are big, they are visible, but they don't feel dominant. They feel less like host and more like guest. What changed? Because there's a difference between being seen and setting the tone. Now, are these brands actually shaping culture again, or are they fighting for attention? Because that needs explaining, and that's exactly what we're going to do on this episode of Collab Lab with Bimma. Remember when one TV moment could make a brand national? In '94, Raekwon wore a yellow Ralph Lauren Snow Beach pullover in a Wu-Tang video. There was no contract or even a paid placement. The jacket was literally designed for ski trips in Aspen, yet it showed up in Staten Island housing projects instead. The streets adopted it and gave it credibility. Credibility makes something cool, and scale, it makes it dominant. Now, that same year, Snoop stepped onto the Saturday Night Live stage wearing a red, white, and blue Tommy Hilfiger rugby. The logo was stretched across his chest, and that shirt sold out nationwide within 48 hours. Music made it cool. TV made it national, and then came repetition. In '98, Gap's Khaki Swing aired constantly. It played on TV, it filled mall windows, and the 50-year dance style re-entered mainstream. And behind that repetition was distribution. In '96, Aaliyah had fronted Tommy Jeans campaigns that ran inside of department stores across the country. Oversized denim and visible logos, they were stocked everywhere from Nordstrom to JCPenney. Now, if you walked into a mall, you weren't looking for the brand. It was literally already in front of you. Now, back then, broadcasting was concentrated. Television reached millions at the same time. Retail was dense and centralized. There were fewer stages, and most people were watching all of the same ones. So if Snoop was on TV and the mall stocked it on the table, you were definitely going to see it. You didn't need to scroll past it. You were going to walk past it. And these brands were built on that system. So if that system is what made these brands matter, what happens when that system starts breaking? So 90s brands were built for a world with literally one stage, and that stage collapsed. The advantage that they were designed for has disappeared with it. Now, the mall lost its grip first. That place that once guaranteed exposure started emptying out. Flagships shrank, foot traffic thinned, and stores, they completely closed. And by 2026, vacancy rates hit a record high. Being in every mall, it stopped being an advantage. The national stage, it broke apart as well. When Snoop wore Tommy on SNL in '94, millions saw it at once. Today, there isn't one stage. There are millions of screens. Winning one doesn't make you national anymore. Then the voices even change. Creator-led brands now outperform heritage brands with Gen Z 3-1. The power has shifted from buying media to earning attention. The stage became interactive. When attention stopped concentrating, scale stopped compounding altogether. Winning once no longer guarantees dominance. New brands proved a completely different model worked. In 2022, LVMH, they took a stake in Aimé Leon Dore. And by 2026, ALD operates 2 flagships, New York and London. And at its peak, Gap operated more than 3,000. Gap needed thousands of doors. And ALD built 2 and made them destinations. The product, it didn't break. The destination is what broke. The system that made these brands dominant, it's gone. And without that system, being big, it doesn't guarantee being relevant. You used to be able to buy one moment. Now you have to win a million small ones. If you're a brand built to be everywhere, what do you do when everywhere disappears? And another question, how do brands feel massive in a world where no one sees the same thing? Just look at what they're actually doing right now. Ralph Lauren, it ties itself to Oak Bluffs, a community with a cultural history. You look at Tommy, attaches itself to Met Gala, a night that already defines fashion relevance. At Abercrombie, it links itself to the NFL tunnel, where athletes are already commanding attention. And then Gap, it aligns with Cat's Eye, a group built by Netflix and voted on by fans. Notice what's happening. That cultural heat isn't originating from within the brand. It's originating somewhere else. The brand steps into it. In the 90s, they were the center of the moment. Now they step into moments that already exist. That is a major shift. They're not broadcasting culture outward. They are literally syncing themselves to culture that's already in motion. And when that sync works, it feels massive, but that's conditional. And the energy belongs to the moment. When the gala ends, the spotlight, it moves. When the season shifts, the tunnel, it resets. When the fandom turns, the algorithm, it follows. The brand doesn't own the gravity, it borrows it. And it doesn't build the same way. In the 90s, repetition made dominance feel permanent. Today, relevance really depends on the timing. So if brands are no longer the source of cultural gravity, why is that gravity so hard to rebuild? The answer to this is that the machine that made them dominant, it doesn't exist anymore. In the 90s, a brand hit once and that system, it carried it completely forward. Now, a TV moment, it didn't just create buzz, it sent people into stores. It put product in front of you again and again and again. That exposure, it reinforced itself. That's how something moved from cool to completely unavoidable. Today, it doesn't really work like that. A viral moment, it might explode online, but it doesn't automatically turn that into a national dominant moment. It doesn't guarantee that you'll see the brand again tomorrow. Attention, it rises really fast and then it disappears just as fast. Even if a brand has a budget to chase every platform, and I'm talking TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, live sports, streaming, that type of saturation is expensive in a way that most fashion brands, they simply cannot sustain. Even when they spend it, the system doesn't really reward repetition that same way. There's no single audience anymore. There are clusters, communities, and subcultures. Meanwhile, new brands, they aren't even trying to be everywhere. They go deep inside of one group and they build loyalty there. They don't need thousands of stores. They need one place that actually feels meaningful. Now, that leaves heritage brands in a very strange position because they're too large to really operate like niche brands. And the infrastructure that once made them universally visible, it's gone. They have to compress. And instead of trying to be constant, they create with intensity. And instead of building permanence, they have to chase these moments that can spike. Not because spikes are better, but because that permanence is way harder to hold. They're not rebuilding dominance. They are literally managing relevance inside of a different system. And that is the real shift here. Now, why doesn't anything feel as big as Ralph Lauren in 1992? Because culture, it used to move through these gates, and to reach everyone, you had to pass through a few powerful rooms. Fewer radio stations, fewer retailers, and a handful of producers at MTV and BET. And if you made it through those rooms, you reach the country. And that's how the 92 Snow Beach pullover became national. It wasn't designed as a street legend. It was just a seasonal polo drop. But when Raekwon wore it, that moment moved it through a centralized system. There weren't 8,000 feeds competing with it for attention. There was one stage and everyone saw it. This wasn't just fashion either. This was how fame worked. Jimmy Iovine said it plainly. The days of the blockbuster, those are numbered because the machine that used to make those superstars, it's completely broken. In the 90s, a rapper that wanted to break, there were checkpoints, 106 in Park, MTV, a CD drop at Best Buy, coverage in The Source. Now, if you cleared those checkpoints, you were everywhere, and that path was pretty narrow. Today, more than 100,000 new tracks are uploaded to Spotify and Apple Music every single day. There's no narrow path, there's just volume. It wasn't just fashion. There used to be 3 networks. Now there's endless feeds. There used to be magazine covers, and now there are private mood boards and Discord servers and algorithm timelines. When Raekwon wore the Snow Beach, it just hit through one shared moment. When Playboy Cardi wears an archival piece today, it doesn't land in one single place. It spreads through TikTok edits and Instagram accounts and Reddit threads and fan pages. The adoption can still be real, but the spread, it is scattered. When the gates disappeared, the center disappeared with them. So it's not that brands forgot how to matter. It's that now everyone is on stage at the same time. And in the 90s, these brands fought to be one thing that everyone saw. Now they're fighting to hold attention longer than a scroll. Culture isn't filtered anymore. It's flooded. So if nothing stays central, how does a brand build something that lasts? Here is the new model for brand relevance. Let's call that operating model cultural conversion. In a fragmented culture, no brand controls the entire stage anymore. That moment is bigger than them. So the question isn't how to own it. The question is, what do you do once you're inside of it? And so step one is you enter. A brand aligns with a live cultural moment, a gala, a fandom, a league, or a community story. Now, this creates access, but access isn't dominance. It's just a temporary visibility. So step two is to anchor. Once you're inside of that moment, the brand has to tie that energy back to something that's stable. So a design language, a point of view, a recognizable identity. If that moment ends and nothing connects back to the brand's core, the energy completely disappears with it. Fragmentation exposes that weakness very fast. So step three, you reinforce, not by repeating the same moment, but by repeating the same identity. Different stages, same center. When multiple moments point back to the same identity, they begin to actually stack up. That's how temporary relevance turns into durable presence. Let's zoom out a bit. In the 90s, repetition happened automatically. The system did the reinforcing for them. Today, it does not. Brands have to convert exposure into memory on purpose. Now, the brands that struggle, they treat these moments as victories, but the brands that survive, they treat these moments as entry points. That is the clear distinction. Dominance isn't gone. It just requires discipline instead of distribution. And most brands, they aren't built for that. Now, why did Eddie Bauer disappear when Ralph Lauren actually survived? And the truth is that Eddie Bauer never found its anchor. It's the same era as Ralph Lauren, the same mall exposure, and the same collapse when the department store traffic completely declined. Now, Eddie Bauer, it faced the same structural pressure. It reduced stores, it refreshed product, it tried to modernize itself, but it filed for bankruptcy as recent as February 2026. Why? Because it showed up without sharpening who it was. It entered moments, it updated collections, and it adjusted its footprint. But when the moment passed, nothing connected back to a clear center. No design language that felt owned, no point of view that actually felt specific. Now, without an anchor, exposure doesn't build any memory. It accelerates the fade. That is the boundary condition here. Alignment without identity is just borrowed attention. And borrowed attention, it compounds to nothing. Shrinking alone, it doesn't create clarity. And Eddie Bauer, it did get smaller, but it didn't get sharper. Ralph Lauren, it pulled back. It cut wholesale accounts. It stepped away from off price. But every contraction pointed towards a more defined identity. And that is the clear difference here. Contraction without clarity isn't repositioning. It's just decline with extra steps. Cultural conversion doesn't fail because of fragmentation is impossible. It fails when a brand skips the anchor, and no amount of moments can fix that. So collab cousins. In the 90s, the system, it made you famous. Today, that system, it just makes you visible. Moments make noise, but identity, that makes memory. The brands that know the difference are the only ones that will be here in another 30 years. Now, I'm Bimma, and this is the Collab Lab. I'll see you next week.